1933 Hitler came to power, and there was certain discrimination. Of course, we were the only Jewish family in Auerbach, a town of 25,000 people, the only Jewish pupil in school. And after Hitler, some of the teachers were Nazis, and some were more tolerant. Some made me sit in the back of the class, of course, you know, and told other children shouldn't have anything to do with this Jewish boy. But there was one particular boy who was very friendly with me because the parents were anti-Nazi. 1935 or 1936, we were not allowed to go to cinemas anymore, you know. We were not allowed to go to swimming pool or any public and places of entertainment. There was discrimination. And we were warned not to keep Jewish books, but we did. And we were warned, all the people were warned, don't, you know, you mustn't listen to foreign broadcasts, but we did. But on the whole, it was quite a happy childhood. I was lucky that I was enrolled as a pupil at the Theodor Herzl Schule. It was the only Zionist day school in Germany, where Hebrew was taught every day, English was taught regularly, and this Theodor Herzl was quite unique in Germany because the young Israeli pioneers in kibbutzim were on first-name terms. And uniquely, we were on first-name terms with our teachers, and we got a very good general education, Theodor Herzl Schule, in 1937. And Theodor Herzl Schule produced three very famous rabbis. I'm excluding me. Rabbi Jacob Petuchowski, who became professor in Cincinnati. Rabbi Dr. Albert Friedlander became the dean of the Leobeck College here, and did a lot of work of reconciliation following Leobeck in Germany. And Rabbi John Rayner, who became the president of our liberal Jewish movement here in England. In October 38, I was due to celebrate my bar mitzvah. So we had it in the Friedens Temple, which was a so-called more conservative synagogue. My mother was in tears, and I couldn't understand why she was crying. But it was so emotional for her to see her only son in a bar mitzvah. Well, we couldn't celebrate bar mitzvah outside the flat. We just invited a few friends for tea, I think, or German coffee clutch. I got 64 marks as present for my bar mitzvah, which had to be given up soon afterwards because the German population, as you probably heard from others as well, had to pay 2 million marks compensation for all the damage done to synagogues and shops. Where I mentioned how Van der Zyl officiated at my bar mitzvah in Berlin, was very brave to say we now have discrimination in yellow benches, which says nur für Juden. He said, don't be ashamed to sit on these benches. The Germans should be ashamed. Uncle Lutz Jacobi, who had this branch in Auerbach, did quite well. He started a small factory in Amsterdam called Elja Jacobi, and got able to guarantee the emigration of my grandparents in January 1939 from Berlin to Amsterdam. In February, he again was successful in getting permission from the Dutch government to let me come in Kindertransport from Berlin to Holland. The Germans invaded quickly on the 15th of May then. We were told, take your pajamas and your best clothes and leave the Bürgerweisreich. And on the Lijnbaansgracht in Amsterdam, there were 3 buses ready. So we boarded the buses, and this Truus Weissmuller was there to see us, took us to the port of IJmuiden, which is a Dutch port on the North Sea. And she persuaded this captain of a cargo boat called the Bodegraven. I've got a photo of that too. To take us away quickly, which he did. The recollection of people who were with us remembered that she left her handbag on board, but went back, wouldn't come with us. Also, she had an opportunity to go to England as well on the boat. She refused. And then my last impression of leaving is firstly, British soldiers were landing to fight the Germans. And the last picture too of the harbor of Amsterdam. The Dutch shell had big oil tanks there, which the Dutch set on fire because they didn't want the oil to go into the German hands. So the smoke of these big oil refineries saw us off as we left. Soon after we had left the harbor, some German fighter planes came over. Luckily, they had no bombs. They would have gladly bombed us, sank the ship. So I dived on the rescue boats, and I wasn't hit by the machine guns, fortunately. Now, the journey was traumatic because we never knew what's going to happen, where we were going, no idea. And finally, the British government must have given permission for us to land in Liverpool. I mean, the Dutch ship wasn't given any authority to sail anywhere, and the Dutch colony, Sumatra and Curaçao, was very far away. No fuel and no food, so we then finally landed at Liverpool. Police. They asked me to speak English, and I just learned one phrase, just enough to make myself understood. But in the Lancashire accent he replied, which I could not understand a word, so we reverted to German, yes. But that showed me I mustn't show off. The refugee committee must have been informed soon after we landed that we in Wigan. So they quickly bought some accommodation, a girls' hostel and a boys' hostel in Manchester, and accommodated us. I was just 15. School leaving age was 14. Couldn't go to school. If I'd been a year older, I would have been interned. We were given the title of friendly enemy alien, but I got permission to work. So Manchester Refugee Committee was very, very good. When they had a Viennese cook who made the wartime rationing, cooked very well. They got a man out of internment camp who was an actor really in Hanover, not trained for looking after children, but he looked after us very well. The cinema in Withington let us go and see cinema pictures free every week, refugee children. Freeman, Hardy and Willis was a big shoe shops all over. Let us buy a pair of shoes once a week. And Burton, the tailors, let us buy a suit every year, free, for refugees. They also gave us hospitality because I stayed with an English family for over a year. they sent us to training, you know, to Maidstone, enrolled me and several other boys from England in Royal West Kent in Maidstone. We were sent to the Jewish Brigade, who were then stationed in Holland. And we had very little work to do in brigade at that time, and we looked after the DPs, the so-called displaced persons, very much. And they knew I could drive because I drove in Manchester at 17, you know. You had no provisional licenses then during the war. So they made me a driver in the brigade. I was very popular because one of my duties was to go from a place called Termonde in French to Antwerp to the headquarters and collect the mail for the regiment. So I was very popular bringing in the mail. The turning point of my life was 1949. As I said, I worked for my uncle. He rebuilt the Dutch liberal congregation, and Lewkowicz and Lily Montague came to Amsterdam to help in the revival of the small liberal congregation in Amsterdam. You know, very few came back from the camps. So it was revived. My uncle became active, and another person who was very active and who came very friendly with me was Otto Frank, the father, who gave me the first edition of the Het Achterhuis of Hans Diary. So he and I and another personality is quite well known in England now, Eva Schloss. We came from Amsterdam to London, 1949, to the World Union Conference. Lewkowicz was our president, and Lewkowicz spoke to us about the need. God waits for us, and the world waits for us to fulfill our Jewish mission, you know, to make good what we've lost in the war. And Lily Montague persuaded me. Didn't need much persuasion. I went to see them and said, well, I wanted to go an early hour, but Lewkowicz said we should help. Any way I can help. Lily Montague said, sure, teach in my religion school, you know, and got involved, and that was the cause of the change in my life. In July 1949, the teaching in Brighton and in other religion schools South End, but was very little extra income, you know. I was working hard in the timber trade in Brick Lane. Very hard work, very nearly breaking my back. I had two back operations as a result. So it was hard, and finally an opportunity arose for me to go to Aberdeen in 1952. Because the Aberdeen community is what we always call an Einheitsgemeinde, one synagogue, 80 people there, 80 Jews there, all mixed, lovely synagogue, and they offered me £3 a week accommodation in the synagogue building, and the Jewish Memorial Council gave me another £3 a week as a looking after small communities. So I stayed 3 years in Aberdeen, working for the community there, which was a very challenging job, because from small community had strict Orthodox Jews, liberal Jews, most didn't care, didn't know, and very few children in the religion school to teach. So I did quite well in Aberdeen, and I could have finished a degree at university. But in 1953, Israel Mattok, the great liberal leader, died. There were hardly any liberal candidates for the Rabbinate and for all our congregations. So they had a scholarship fund, and three pupils applied for and got money from the scholarship fund. So in 1955, I came to London and started studying at university. And then, as I mentioned before, I took an easy degree, Hebrew, Dutch, German, and then another honors degree later on, and finally was ordained in 1961. But I persevered, got my degree, and I had success in Southgate. Southgate, that liberal congregation at that time was about 200 members already. I was there as a student, helping out, and then they kept me as a reverend for 10 years, and then a rabbi. So I was there for 18 years in Southgate, and built up the congregation to 800 members. It became one of the largest congregations in North London.
Wonderful.
And my wife proved wonderful, not only as a wife and mother, but as a so-called Rebbitzin, looking after the congregation, was very popular. So I stayed 7 years in Wembley until suddenly I had an offer to go to Zurich in Switzerland to become their rabbi. So from 82 until 98 years, I was the rabbi of the liberal community in Zurich. Mm-hmm. So when on my 65th birthday, I said, I want to come back to England. So I retired quite early at 65. But because I fortunately was still active at 65, early retirement, so I became a chairman of our Beit Din for 10 years. I helped out congregations for 5 years. I was part-time rabbi of the Amsterdam liberal congregation. So I did a lot of helping out. I got more involved in Ajax B'nai B'rith. I gradually made changes, made them a bit more liberal.
Yeah.
But at certain things I draw the line,
Yeah. Where do you draw the line?
Well, the first services at the Liberal Jewish Synagogue, nearly all in English. Very little Hebrew.
Yes.
They had no, even had service on a Sunday sometime, early liberals, And very, very short Haggadah, very short service. First prayer book had 25 services, mainly in English. And it was more English than Hebrew, Jewish, I could say. I'm exaggerating, but it was a very, very short and very liberal service indeed. Hardly anybody at the liberal synagogue when I first said in 1950 wore any kippah or talit. Now they nearly all do. Well, I'm just a retired Jewish rabbi, I'm multinational. I don't believe in patriotism, only in my country, right or wrong. I feel myself, I've got a British passport, but I feel myself very close to Holland, very affinity, very close to Israel. And I've become reconciled to Germany too, because Germany now is so different than it was 50, 60 years ago. Because Germany is trying to be democratic, and Germany is a country that outlaws anti-Semitism much more than we do. And Germany is trying its utmost to make up for what they have done now to the Jewish people. So I have a much closer affinity to Germany than I had many, many years ago. And I'm following the example of Leo Beck, my great hero, Leo Beck, influenced me, but also, the story, he went back soon after the war to Germany. He became a Großes Verdienstkreuz in Germany. He became a very close friend of the first president of post-war Germany, Theodor Heuss. And he came back and he believed in reconciliation.
Yeah.
Another one of, I'm talking of reconciliation, is Martin Buber.
Yes. He
went back soon afterwards to lecture in Germany, became a Friedenspreis of the Frankfurt University soon after the war, And the third of my heroes is very much in the news at the moment, is Yehudi Menuhin, who also went back as a Jew to play in the camps and play in Berlin Philharmonic. All signs of reconciliation, which I think was achieved. Well, it's always said we don't learn from history. I hope I've learned something from my own history, and I hope my children and grandchildren. I'm very proud, Whatever I've achieved, the greatest achievement is always to keep your family together and inspire them, Without much trying hard, but I've managed to do that. They're following very much in liberal Jewish footsteps and teaching and practicing, which is very rare, even among the Rabbinate nowadays. So my famous passages is the last passage in our Bible. The prophet Malachi says, the last sentence in our Bible says, Elijah will come and will turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the hearts of the children to their parents. So very often, even conducting funerals, I quoted that. If you do nothing else to cause Elijah to come or bring the Messianic age nearer, you keep the family together.